So welcome everyone to the first talk of our 3-day Circle of the Way retreat. Here in the deep quiet of our Zendo without walls. The deep quiet of birdsong, wind, bells, the buzzing of the light. Just one sitting. The theme for these days of shared practice is inspired or breathed in by the opening lines of a chapter in Dogen's Treasury of the True Dharma Eye, or Shobogenzo. The chapter is called Continuous Practice. Actually, Continuous Practice Part 1. Here's the beginning of that chapter. You could also say the middle and the end. Dogen writes, on the great road of Buddha ancestors, there is always unsurpassable practice, continuous and sustained. It forms the circle of the way and is never cut off. Between aspiration, practice, enlightenment, and nirvana, there is not a moment's gap. Continuous practice is the circle of the way. Dogen goes on, this being so, continuous practice is unstained, not forced by you or others. The power of this continuous practice confirms you as well as others. It means your practice affects the entire earth and the entire sky in the 10 directions. Although not noticed by others or by yourself, it is so. What an affirmation. And what a relief. You are that. Just as you are. Confirmed, confirming, circle of the way. I named this retreat to be posted on the Mountain Cloud website some time ago, not knowing where it would lead. Since then, there have been circles everywhere. One student was sitting with a line from Dogen, the leaves of the lotus are round, round, rounder than a mirror. Yesterday afternoon, she sent this in an email. Before sitting, dwelling on the round lotus koan this morning, I noticed all the circular objects around me at home and how all the sky objects appear circular, and had a sense that the cosmos itself is circular. Zero is circular. On my table, I see the Enzo circle where I sit. Even compassion feels circular. wherever you turn. One circle. Circle of the way. The week before, a dear friend and longtime Zen practitioner sent word that her sister had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. The sister, her near and only sibling, would undergo chemo combined with radiation and then a double mastectomy. My friend, with a sense of sad whimsy, I think, wrote, "I'm glad for impermanence when life takes a turn." The word impermanence hung in the air like a wispy cloud over the screen. How we try to hold that word in place, even for a moment. But it's already gone. So transparent, you can put your hand right through it. As Master Nansen once put it, all of it, this is nothing but a whirling of the wind. Transparent, empty, and yet the diagnosed sister made the decision to delay the start of her treatment by a week, 1 week, so the two siblings could take a long planned trip to the North Shore of Lake Superior. It was a 65th birthday celebration. My friend wrote, "Saw the Milky Way, a wonder." And she sent a photo of a collage made of stones there on the shore of the lake, that North Shore. "A full morning's project," she wrote. I'd like to see if you can see it, this image. A circle. Look into it. And you see it's a breast. Beautiful. Impermanent. A few days after this email arrived, I shared the photo with a student, an artist, who then shared that her neighbor down the street, a close friend with 2 children, I think small children, has the gene that disposes her to breast cancer. She's facing radical surgery. The student wrote that she wished she could protect her, take it, do it for her. She saw the Stone Collage. Said, I looked at it for a long time. Heard about the morning spent creating it. And she wrote these lines. This is the doing that's being done for now. No donning of battle gear, no shields, no taking an arrow for another. Just a steady gathering round, holding each other up until the next wave. A steady gathering round. Round, the word round is alone on its own line. A single circle. Until the next wave. The Bodhisattva Kanan, hearer of the cries of the world, awakened to the sound of a wave crashing onto the shore. Any trace of separation utterly dissolved. Circle of the way. So today, as a way of looking into this circle, this way, the next wave, or now, I'd like to take up a koan. This is case 69 in the Blue Cliff Record, or Hekigan Roku. Nansen draws a circle. I'll read the case. Nansen, Kisu, and Myoku set out together to pay their respects to the national teacher Chu. On their way, Nansen drew a circle on the ground and said, if you can say something, then let's go farther. Kisu seated himself in the circle. Myoku made an informal bow. Nansen said, if it is so, then let's not go any farther. Kisu said, what is this all about? I'm always so grateful when the masters speak for us. What is this all about? What is this all about? Every time I have this great opportunity, privilege, joy, challenge of beginning a session, a retreat, I'm reminded of the custom of beginning with a koan mu. How many talks, how many times taking up mu? With the pandemic and our lately, or for the last more than a year and a half, monthly online retreats, you could say that custom has been thrown to the wind. You could say nothing but a whirling of the wind. But on the other hand, every koan is nothing but mu. In other words, every koan is nothing but you, intimately you. In this case, the essential reality of our life, of what it is to be, is presented by Joshu's teacher of 40 years, Nansen. A single gesture, like that single sound. Here, a circle, and a challenge that turns out to be resolved from the start. Nansen, Kisu, and Mayuku are Dharma siblings, all disciples of the great 8th century master Baso. Nansen is senior among them. They're on their way here to visit the national teacher, Echu, this renowned teacher. And according to the record, personally known to at least Nansen and Mayuku as a teacher. There's a wonderful story and quite a record from Echu of his teaching. He was a mountain monk, a hermit for 40 years. And, the word of his depth went out to those who had ears to hear. And among them, the emperor, who sent a messenger repeatedly calling Echu to come to the palace and assume this seat of the national teacher. Echu declined repeatedly, and finally, one reading says out of compassion, he accepted and spent the rest of his life there as national teacher. Here are just a couple of his short teachings. A monk asked, "How can one become a Buddha?" The national teacher said, "Cast off the Buddha and all beings, and at that moment, you will be liberated." How can one become a Buddha? An awakened one? You cannot become anything. Already that. And actually, the I that would become something doesn't exist. Cast off our concepts, including the concept of awakening. Cast off Buddha and all beings. Drop everything. What remains? A monk asked, "How can one be in accord with it?" The national teacher said, "Don't think of good or evil. Personally see Buddha nature. Set aside that judging mind and simply see for yourself. A student recently said, so heartfelt, following some kind of discord in her home. I don't want to live in discord anymore. The phrase, the accord of discord, came to mind. How can one be in accord with it? How can one be in accord with this? And then here's how Kisu puts it in one teaching. Kisu, or Guizhang, he wrote, all of you here, don't make the error of employing your mind. No one can do it for you. Moreover, there is no place where the mind can be used. Don't be seeking it somewhere else. There's no place where the mind can be used. There's no logic by which we can work our way through an equation to come home to this. It's about reality, about this, what this really is, about you. Don't be seeking it somewhere else. Where else could it be? For several years now, I've been meeting mostly weekly, as we can, with a friend and a Dharma teacher in the Boundless Way tradition. It's a cousin lineage to Sambo Zen. We're currently working our way through the True Dharma Eye. It's a collection of 300 koans compiled by Dogen. So last week, we took up an exchange, a case, with Mayu Baoshe. This is the same Mayoku who's here walking with Nansen and Kisu. It's so lovely to have that be this sort of opening before I had even turned toward what this koan for today would be. But this case with Mayu that we found in the 300 koans, this treasury, it's pretty well known. It's actually quite famous because it ends what may be Dogen's most iconic work, the Genji Koan, or actualizing the fundamental point, that singular essay. Probably the most famous part of it is to study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by the myriad things. And on it goes. There's another short passage in this Genji Koan that speaks directly to what we're doing here. When you find your place where you are, practice occurs, actualizing the fundamental point, Genji Koan. When you find your way at this moment, practice occurs, actualizing the fundamental point. For the place, the way, is neither large nor small, neither yours nor others. It's right here. No inside, outside, self, other. The circle of the way. So the final section of this essay begins with this teaching of Myoku, this koan that my friend and I took up. Mayu, or Zen Master Baoshe, was fanning himself. A monk approached and said, "Master, the nature of wind is permanent, and there is no place it does not reach. Why then do you fan yourself?" Sort of a bold question. Mayu responds, "Although you understand that the nature of wind is permanent, you do not understand the meaning of its reaching everywhere." "What is the meaning of its reaching everywhere?" asks the monk. Mayu just kept fanning himself. The monk bowed. What does it mean that it reaches everywhere? Or this sound? Each face on the screen? It reaches everywhere. Exactly here. Whenever I'm turning toward these koans, such a rich inheritance, often seem like old friends, but I know they may be quite new, quite foreign, and that is absolutely fine. It's not about logic. But I always, at some point, think, to offer, an instruction like, what do we do? I mean, every word of this has been an invitation, actually a response to that question. What do we do? But there is a kind of down-to-earth instruction that Yamada Kon Roshi offers again and again in his talks. And if you've read Zen, The Authentic Gate, you will have read a short chapter on these 3 essential attitudes, 3 essential elements. He compares them to the 3 legs of a tripod kettle. And generally speaks about them as great root belief, great mass of doubt, and in this telling that I read most recently, Great Indignant Will. Or maybe just the great will of being here, of showing up for your practice. So, great root belief. Roshi writes, you believe firmly that you are able to awaken, are able to find what you are looking for, because what you are after is your true self, which in various ways is called Buddha nature, self nature, Dharma nature, essential nature, fundamental nature, but is really your true self. It's just you. In this telling of it, he wrote, this true self of yours is nowhere but in you yourself. If it were something outside yourself, it could be so well hidden somewhere so that you wouldn't be able to locate it. But what you need to find is inside yourself. Actually, just in this sitting, that inside outside will of itself dissolve. And what he goes on to say points to that. He says, actually, what is talking like this is it. Is this sound inside or outside yourself? And then he says about this belief, it is anchored as firmly as the roots of a giant tree without moving an inch. Suddenly, this image of your sitting, of Zazen, firmly rooted, like a giant tree, like a mountain. A very dynamic mountain. And so still. The next requisite is the greatness of doubt. Roshi writes, the word doubt doesn't mean doubts you have about this or that in your head. It means that when you practice mu, you become one huge lump of mu, completely identical with it. At first, he says, when you do your mu, you're on this side and mu is on the other side. You and mu are two different things. It can feel like that, like you're adding mu to something, even adding it to the breath. He goes on, but if you keep mooing in all earnestness, the distance between you and mu becomes smaller and smaller, and in the end, it disappears completely. Familiar instructions, you have to melt into mu, or you must be absorbed in mu. He writes, usually this process is called concentration, but it's not concentrating on something outside yourself. Absorption might be a better word to describe this process. The great mass of doubt means total absorption. I just picture a gesture, a breath, a step. By its very nature, total absorption. The last requisite is the great indignant will, like the fire under the kettle, sometimes called great perseverance, just keeping on, no matter what. Yamada Koan says, bring these three together and you cannot but awaken. But there is still that last step. Just one. One step. Take the gesture of any one of these masters in this koan. So let's return to the case. This journey with Nansen, Kisu, and Mayoku, on their way together to visit national teacher Chu. And Nansen stops and draws a circle on the ground. And says to his companions, if you can say something, then let's go further. Circle on the ground. There's the whole of it. What could you possibly say? This one gesture, complete, inexhaustible, empty. This fact. That's it. Say a fitting word. Offer a response in kind. And if you can, we'll continue on our way. How many times monks are faced with this sort of scene? Say a word. And of course, they're struck dumb because we think we have to say a Zen word or a turning word or a smart word or this wise word or this insightful word. Kisu, walking there, now pausing there, is not the least bit caught up in right or wrong. He just sits down in the circle. There it is. All of it. There's the circle. Mayoku makes a bow from the waist. There it is. Complete. There's the circle. Nansen says, if it is so, then let's not go any further. Nansen is appreciating his companions. This Dharma play, you could say. It's all here. There's no need to go anywhere. Where could you go? Kisu says, what is this all about? But he's not protesting. He's simply showing it again. The whole circle. The circle of the way. Completely at home. Right where you are. Does their journey continue? The case doesn't say what they do. But Dogen's final line of the Genji Koan offers a clue. Actually, this springs from Dogen's own most fundamental query, this quandary, this question that drove him to practice. If from the beginning all beings are Buddha, then why do we have to practice? Somebody asked this so poignantly at a recent Q&A. Here's the Dharma, shining like the noonday sun. And the question, why is it so hard to awaken? Nowhere but here. Why can't we see it? Why do we have to look for it? The Genji Koan asks, the wind freely pervades everywhere. There is no place that it does not reach. Why need a fan? Dogen responds, the nature of wind is permanent. Because of that, this is the last line. The nature of wind is permanent. Because of that, the wind of the Buddha house brings forth the gold of the earth and ripens the cream of the long river. The gold of the earth, the cream of the long river. This vast and boundless zero, the nature, you could say, the substance of who we are, reaching everywhere, as gone as the wind. And because of that, because of it, here we are. The gold of the earth, the ripening cream of the long river. Continuous practice is the circle of the way. Already realized this empty, all-pervading transparency. One. And yet functioning moment to moment, sometimes in pain, sometimes in joy, sometimes in a serious diagnosis, sometimes in a collage of stones carefully arranged on a northern shore. The doing that's being done for now. Master Secho wrote a verse to each case in the Blue Cliff Record, and others have followed in that tradition. My koan companion, my Dharma brother from Boundless Way, whose Dharma name is Hotetsu, offered this verse in response to this case, the journey of Nansen, Kisu, and Myoku. Somehow finding himself right there in the circle of the koan. Here's his verse. Say something? Not me. Then let's go back, I'd say. Shouldering my knapsack and continuing toward the national teacher. Circle of the way. It's the invitation to us to find ourselves right where we are and let our practice unfold. Thank you for this shared practice.